have a confession. I've always felt slightly off in my clothes, like I was never really living up to my full style potential. Part of it is because I'm taller than the average woman where I live, which means most stores simply don't carry clothes that fit my proportions. So for many years I ended up wearing cropped sleeves and shorter hems, not as a style choice, but because that was all I can find. But beyond that, I also realized I had never truly taken the time to understand what works for my body or what image I wanted to portray through clothing. So I've spent countless hours researching and experimenting how to build a wardrobe that actually works for me. Before we dive deeper, hi, I'm Noor. I'm a self-taught sewist, currently on a journey to completely transform my wardrobe into something more mature, intentional, and flattering. During my hunt for the perfect style system, I came across countless theories online, and while a lot of them were helpful, most of them missed the lifestyle factor and other factors I consider to be as important. For example, systems like Kibi focus heavily on shape and visual harmony, but can become a little restrictive if taken too literally. If you're not familiar with Kibi, it's essentially a body typing system that categorizes people based on their proportions, bone structure, and overall shape to help determine which silhouettes tend to look better on them. There are plenty of resources online if you're curious to learn more about it. In the Kibi system, I would probably fall into the dramatic category, for which it's recommended to wear sharper shapes and more tailored clothing. And while I do think those shapes suit me, I also know that in real life, I want to feel comfortable in my own clothes, even on formal events. I don't want a wardrobe that only looks good in theory. I want one that works for my lifestyle. So instead of following a single style system, I came up with 5 different filters through which every sewing project has to go through before I commit to making it. The first filter is context. This is where you'll decide what garments you'll be making based on your lifestyle. A few questions you can ask yourself to help guide you are: what do I do on most of my days? And what gap I'm trying to fill in my wardrobe? I'm someone who spends most of her days at home, and during spring, I love being outside whenever I can. I like feeling the sun on my skin, soaking up some vitamin D, going on long walks, playing badminton, and just generally moving a lot throughout the day. But at the same time, I still want to feel comfortable and put together. So naturally, a nice pair of shorts felt like the perfect addition. I also realized I wanted pieces that work well with layering. During this season, my body can't decide if it's hot or cold, so I like the idea of being able to throw on a layer and remove it throughout the day, which is why I decided to make a cardigan. Both of these pieces fit really well into my current lifestyle. So now that we know what we're making, let's move to the second filter: fabric. This filter is really helpful when fabric shopping because it stops me from buying fabric blindly, which I'm sure as sewists we're all guilty of. Over time, I've developed a few attributes that I always keep in mind when fabric shopping. Since I want my garments to look and feel premium, I prioritize natural fibers and avoid see-through fabrics at all costs. The only time I occasionally allow synthetic or blended fabric is for things like outerwear or accessories where durability is more important. I also try to choose fabric that makes sense for the current season. I found this beautiful linen the other day and it instantly clicked in my head as the perfect fabric for the shorts project sitting in my backlog. Which is exactly why I like to start with the context filter first, because it makes fabric shopping much more intentional. I'm currently still building the foundations of my wardrobe, so I'm focusing mainly on solid colors for now. But on days when I'm feeling a little adventurous and want to experiment with prints, I like to go with larger and more spaced out patterns because they feel calmer and less visually distracting. This part of the system is very personal. Your fabric rules should reflect your own taste. The next filter goes hand in hand with fabric choice, and that's color. Have you ever worn a certain color and suddenly got the classic, "Are you sick?" question? And then you look in the mirror and realize it's just the color that you're wearing that's making you look washed out. Because some colors can completely drain your features while others make you look brighter and healthier. There are professional color analysis services if you want to go really deep into this topic, but for now I mainly rely on observation and personal experimentation. For the longest time, I had a huge obsession with baby pink clothing, and I never realized how flat it made me look. Since I naturally have a bit of pink in my complexion already, the color would just blend into my skin tone and would completely wash me out. So now that I know better, I prefer warmer tones and colors that create a little more contrast against my skin. One tip that really helps me when fabric shopping is laying the fabric directly on my shoulders and taking a picture, then comparing how my complexion looks in different colors. I even keep a reference photo of me wearing my absolute worst color just to have something to compare against. For the cardigan, I picked this beautiful navy cotton blend knit that works really well with the olive linen I picked for the shorts. Which brings me to my next point, choosing fabric that can easily mix and match with the rest of your wardrobe. Especially when you're trying to build your capsule wardrobe, having pieces that naturally work together makes getting dressed so much easier. When I'm fabric shopping, I like to bring swatches of my existing fabrics or planned sewing projects so I can compare colors before buying anything. The next filter is where things start getting interesting. We're talking about shape. To help guide the silhouettes I choose, I've been using Ellie Jean's body matrix system. If you're not familiar with it, I'll link one of her videos below because she explains it much better than I ever could. But very briefly, the system uses three attributes, which are width, length, and shape, to help place you into one of 27 body types and suggest silhouettes that tend to create the most visual harmony for that type. I think I am in the narrow, long, medium category, which means I have a narrow frame, a long vertical line, and a medium amount of softness in my curves. For this body type, longer and straighter silhouettes tend to work really well, while oversized clothing, excessive gathers, and dramatic volume can start overwhelming the frame. And honestly, I completely agree with that. Whenever I wear very oversized clothing, it feels like the clothes are wearing me instead of the other way around. But this is also where adaptation becomes important. Just because tailored shorts might technically flatter me more, I'm not going to start wearing trousers around the house like I'm in a Ralph Lauren campaign. The context filter still matters. Instead, I will make relaxed shorts with an elastic waistband, but without making them excessively wide. I actually already tested a prototype where I added 20 centimeters of ease into the shorts, and they looked incredibly boxy on me. So for the final version, I'm reducing that ease down to 10 centimeters to keep the shape more balanced. If you'd like a full tutorial on how to make shorts with an ease custom to your body type using free online resources, comment something like "show me how to make the shorts." For the cardigan, I'm making similar adjustments. Instead of tight cuffs, I'm keeping the sleeves straight to honor my long vertical line. I will also make it fit me at the shoulders instead of dropped shoulders. And I think that's probably the most important things about these style systems. The goal isn't to follow them blindly or treat them as strict fashion laws. It's to understand why certain shapes suit you and then adapt the clothes you actually want to wear. The very last filter is construction, because the way a garment is constructed will not only determine how polished it looks, but also how well it survives years of washing and wear. I usually plan the construction details way before I start sewing, and I focus on three things. First, it must look premium. For example, a thicker hem will almost always look more polished than a thin one. A neckline finished with a facing usually looks much cleaner and more refined than one that's simply rolled over. Most non-sewists wouldn't be able to point out these specific technical details, but people can instantly tell when a garment is well made versus cheap. Learning these techniques has completely changed the quality of the clothes I make for myself. For both the shorts and the cardigan, I'm doing deeper hems, and I'm also adding a facing to the cardigan neckline to give it a cleaner finish. The second thing I think about is functionality. Things like pockets, closures, and ease of movement, etc. I personally add pockets whenever I can, and I always make sure they're deep enough to fit my long hands, which is honestly my personal revenge against fast fashion brands that insist on giving women fake pockets or pockets the size of a coin. Lastly, durability. Finishing raw edges is completely non-negotiable for me, coming from someone who doesn't own an overlocker. So, what's your excuse? I usually finish my seams with a zigzag stitch. I use this special foot that has a guide to keep the outer stitch right on the outside of the seam so the stitch doesn't look crooked. It's called an overcast foot. And for lighter fabrics like these linen shorts, I'm using French seams. If you leave raw edges unfinished, your washing machine will slowly start eating away the fabric over time. For the cardigan, I'm also adding twill tape to the shoulder seams, since the stretch of the knit fabric is usually placed horizontally for comfort and movement. The shoulder area needs to be stabilized. Otherwise, the weight of the garment combined with hanging and repeated washes can slowly pull the shoulders out of shape over time. But beyond durability, unfinished garments don't look as elevated, and that completely defeats the purpose of building a better wardrobe. I'm completely in love with these two pieces I added to my wardrobe. For the first time in a long time, I feel both confident and comfortable in what I'm wearing. If you think there's another filter or a factor I should include in this system, let me know in the comments. If you like videos like this, subscribe for more. Until then, take good care.